We're going to have Steven Rothberg and Faith Rothberg. They're good friends, we hope, most days anyway. They run collegerecruiter.com. They are going to talk about disruption and embracing it as opposed to fighting it. Steve is formerly a judicial law clerk for the state of Minnesota. They live in cold country, Minnesota. Cold. Although if you come from Ukraine, they probably don't think it's all that cold.
That is true.
They founded the College Recruiter in 1991. The job board went live in 1996, a year after Yahoo launched, and 2 years before Google launched, 8 years before the birth of Facebook. And Steve was disciplined in 5th grade for selling candy during math class and in college for running a massive fantasy hockey league. Faith is CEO, where she's been a college recruiter for 22 years. She started as a programmer for Ford Motor Company. She was a manufacturing information technology consultant with KPMG. I've known Faith for a long time. I was in a store a few years ago and saw a pillow, and they had one that said hope, and one that said love, and one that said faith. So I sent her a picture of the pillow, and she told me last night, "You should have bought me the pillow." Sorry.
Exactly.
Faith and Steven.
Thanks.
Hi. Thanks, Peter. Wow, that makes me feel old. Hi, I'm Faith Rothberg, and as Peter said, I'm CEO of College Recruiter. And this is my husband, life partner, business partner, Steven Rothberg, and he's president and founder. And today what we'd like to do is talk to you about how we decided very deliberately to disrupt our business so that we could enter the pay-for-performance or pay-per-click business.
Thanks.
Go for it.
And as Peter said, so yeah, we're husband and wife. We've been married for about 25 and a half years. And just as a small joke, one of our former senators, I think he was married for like 33, 34, 35 years when he said this, but he said, yeah, you know, Franny and I have been married for 34 years, many of them happily. So I'm much happier than Faith is. If anybody knows me, they would understand that. So we come from Minnesota. For those of you who don't know the U.S., if you picture a map of the U.S., Minnesota is right at the very top, right in the center. This is what it looks like there right now. When we came over to Barcelona, I think it was like, what, -5 Fahrenheit in Minneapolis, and it was like +60 here. So it was a welcome change. If you see at the back, that silver tube with the glass, that's what we call the Skyway system. Almost every building in downtown Minneapolis, it's a metro area of about 3 million. Almost every building in downtown Minneapolis is connected by skyways. So you can walk from one building to another. You can walk from your apartment a mile or more to work without ever having to go outside, which in February was awesome. We had the snowiest February in history. So bring on climate change. This is probably what Minnesota is best known for. Anybody know who this is? Yeah. So one of my failings in life is I never saw him perform live, even though he basically lived just a few miles from us. So what is College Recruiter? College Recruiter is a job search site used by students and recent graduates of 1-year, 2-year, and 4-year colleges and universities. And in the US, what that means are technical schools, vocational schools, community colleges, which give associate's degrees, and the 4-year colleges and universities give bachelor's degrees and master's. We believe that every student and recent graduate deserves a great career. So our site launched in 1996, and since that, or for that entire period of time, we've been what we call open, meaning that any student, any recent graduate from any school in the US or Canada can use our site, search all the listings, apply to all of them. One of the benefits of that is that we have a lot more traffic than a lot of our competitors in the college and university niche, about 2.5 million visitors a year. We've greatly increased the number of postings on our site. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, if we got to about 40,000, our site pretty much crashed. Then we kind of rebuilt it all internally. And now at any given time, we have over 500,000. We've actually decreased that in part by eliminating Europe. Thanks, Brexit. We also have over 40,000 articles, blogs, videos, et cetera. That drives a lot of organic traffic and then also, of course, helps the candidates hopefully become a little bit better qualified. One of the things, and we'll touch on this a little bit later in the presentation, that's unusual about our business is that we have what we call a publisher network. So when an employer posts a job or 1,000 jobs to our site, we then distribute those jobs and to hundreds of college career service offices and hundreds of college newspapers, and along with some other sites like LinkedIn. So you may be a candidate on LinkedIn, search for, say, an internship, read the posting, you click the apply button, you're going to be instantly redirected through College Recruiter and go over to the employer's website or their ATS to apply. And that's where a fair amount of our traffic comes from. Certainly not all of it, but a fair amount of it. We're here today, as Faith was saying, to talk about how we disrupted our business, how we transitioned from being almost completely duration-based a couple of years ago to now being almost completely performance-based. We still have customers who are purchasing postings on a duration basis, 30 days for $75, or they might have what we call an all-you-can-eat package, unlimited postings for 3 months for $5,000. But that's become the rare exception now. And I think probably within a year, I don't know if we'll have any of those. So the history of performance-based marketing, in 1996, which coincidentally was the same year that our site went online, there was an itty-bitty website called Planet Oasis. And Planet Oasis was selling banner advertising on a cost-per-click basis. In 2002, so flash forward a little bit, Google started to sell cost-per-click advertising on the consumer marketing side. And what I mean by consumer marketing is the sale of products or services. Yes, some employers did and still do buy banner advertising from Google on a CPC basis, but overwhelmingly, it's the consumer marketers that do that. A year later, our friend Don Firth created the first cost-per-click job search engine called Top USA Jobs. That still exists. I think he's in Boca Raton, Florida. Is that right?
That's right.
And then a year after that, our friends from Indeed took that cost-per-click model and popularized it. Thank you, Indeed. In 2016, we created what we called Jobs That Scale. And Svenja, are you able to click on the video? So, perfect. So where did Jobs at Scale come from? So Faith and I were up in this town of Duluth, Minnesota, about 70,000 people on the shore of Lake Superior. We're walking along, and we had recently had 2 of our large customers come to us. One was Aflac, big insurance company, and another one was Uber, the ride-sharing company. And they did not want to purchase postings on a traditional duration basis. They wanted to purchase them on a performance basis. Aflac wanted to purchase leads or applications. They wanted to purchase thousands of them. Uber wanted to purchase tens of thousands of what we call apply clicks. When a candidate sees the posting on our site, clicks the apply button, and goes over to the employer's website to apply. We didn't really have a good product or process in place for that. For those of you who have ever talked to me, you'll know that that's not going to stand in my way. And so we went ahead and took that business and then tried to figure it out later, which you don't really like that approach, do you? Okay. So,
not always the best.
So why did we do this? Well, we could see that the way that consumer advertising had gone with Google, and that the way that employment marketing or recruitment advertising was going with Indeed, that our world was shifting rapidly towards pay for performance. Now, a couple of years ago when we really went down this path, I think we felt like it would take 4, 5, 6 years before we were here. Thank goodness that we got started a couple of years ago, because at least in our niche, this is the world that we live in. Most of our employer clients would not be our employer clients if we didn't embrace pay for performance, and it's given us a really big advantage in the marketplace. The risk gets shifted, and in some cases eliminated. Now, a lot of job boards that we'll talk to look at it in terms of like on a posting by posting basis. So I think we saw that Stepstone was charging something like 1,200 euros for a posting for 30 days. That'd be kind of nice. But you know, in our niche, somewhere between $75 and $200 US is a pretty normal amount. And a lot of job boards will say, well, screw giving that revenue up. We don't want to get $1 a click and make $5 a posting. We can't afford to give up $100 in revenue and get $5 back. And that's just not the way it's worked out for us and for a lot of other sites. By shifting risk, what I mean by that and eliminating it is if we're selling a posting for, say, $75, and then we take and distribute that to our publisher partners to help drive additional traffic. If we're selling it for $75 on a duration basis, but we're buying traffic on a pay-per-click basis, we have an arbitrage risk. It might be that to make that customer happy, we might only have to buy $5 worth of clicks. But what if we have to buy $125 worth of clicks to make that customer happy? Now we're losing money on that. By charging our customers on a per-click basis and by paying our publishers on a per-click basis, we can ensure that we lock in a positive return on investment on each and every job posting. For the employer, it eliminates the whole post and pray problem. Here's $300. I pray that the posting works for me. They get no guarantee of response. Appcast and eQuest did a study studies a few years ago that showed that in the US, across millions of postings, hundreds of job boards, and thousands of employers, so it was a very two broad-ranging studies, that the average job posting generated 1 apply click. Well, if you need to hire 10 people, or 50 people, or 100 people, how are you going to do that if one candidate clicks to your website? You probably can't even hire one person that way. So when the employer pays per click, if the posting works well, they're happy. And if the posting works well, we're happy. And it aligns our interests in that way. It's also enabled us to increase revenues, not decrease revenues. And the way that we do that is, if under the old model, an employer that we might be working with might have, say, 1,000 jobs available or posted on their site at any given time. Because the candidates who use our site have 0 to 3 years of experience, typically about 400 of that 1,000 will be a good fit for us. And if we had to try to sell postings to that employer, day after day, month after month, we might get that employer advertising with us for a couple of months out of the year. Or they might just buy 5 postings. These are the 5 jobs that we're having the most difficulty with. Under our new model, that same employer, they have 1,000 postings on their site, 400 are good fit for us, we're going to run all 400. Because they're going to say, scrape our site, or here's a feed, and we're going to pay you on a pay-per-click basis. More and more of the employers that we're working with are becoming more and more sophisticated, and they're in control over what jobs we run. They're in control over what they're paying per click per job, and sometimes that changes on an hourly basis, and Faith is going to get into the complexities of that. So it makes the whole process much, much more efficient. So the increasing the revenues, I talked a little bit about how we can basically run all 400 postings rather than 5. Or we can work with them month after month after month, 12 months out of 12, instead of maybe 2 months out of 12. The employers that we work with are now much more focused on the value that we deliver than on the cost that they're paying us. If we help them hire people, they'll pay for that. The reality is that no job board charges so much per click or per posting that you're too expensive if you're helping the employer hire people. We're pretty cheap, right? When you look at all the costs in recruiting somebody, the job posting ad is one of the smallest costs out there. But no matter how cheap a job posting is, it's too much money if it doesn't work. It's just a waste of time, and the employers don't have time. Something else that's really come about that was a surprise, a very pleasant surprise to us, is a huge increase in subscription revenue. And by that, we mean that month after month after month, those employers are working with us. It's almost like a set it and forget it. Mm-hmm. A key that we found in our business is to make it as simple as possible for that employer. The employers never have to lift a finger to add, edit, or inactivate a posting on our site. And I definitely encourage you to adopt that model. If employers are going to have to log into your site and post a job, the easiest thing for them to do on a daily basis is not to do that. It's going to be easier for them to send us that job. So actually, don't go down that road. We'll take that business. Something else that's happened just in the last 3, 4, 5 months is we've had a number of employers, a small percentage but rapidly growing, who are using what they call open IOs, open insertion orders or open purchase orders. And what that means is that we are to continue to run all of their ads on a pay-per-click basis until they tell us to stop. And month after month after month, that's the subscription side, but also the total budget available to us per month has no limit. So, and Faith, you're going to talk about the hotel chain, right?
Yep.
For that. So the shift to programmatic in the US is, I can best describe it as not an evolution, it's been a revolution. In the last year or two, we have seen more advancements in HR tech in our space than in the previous 25 years combined in business. The US recruitment advertising market is about a $5 billion market. The addressable amount, sort of how much business we can go after, is about $1.5 billion of it. The rest of it, it's basically Indeed selling recruiter seats, resume searching. And it's also what our friends at ZipRecruiter really are phenomenal at, and that's the small businesses and the medium-sized businesses where they're hiring one person here, one person there. If they've only got 1 or 2 postings at any given time, they're not a really good candidate. That employer isn't a very good potential customer for programmatic. You need a lot of postings. You need dozens or hundreds in order for that to work really, really well. So in 2018, total programmatic portion of the market was about 23%, about $350 million. And as compared to consumer marketing, online consumer marketing, pay-per-click, is about 90%. So employment marketing, recruitment advertising always follows consumer. So when our industry goes to 90%, and we think that's only going to be in a few years, that $350 million becomes $1.35 billion, roughly 4-fold. So if all we do with jobs at scale is maintain our market share, our jobs at scale revenue increases 4-fold in just a couple of years. Efficiencies, I mentioned that earlier. We had a big aha moment a couple of years ago. We were at a programmatic job ad buying conference, basically in our backyard in Minneapolis. There was a sales executive from Bing that was speaking, and Bing basically was selling banner advertising. They had about 200 salespeople, and they were losing money. What they changed, they went all in on programmatic. They went from 200 salespeople to 8. They went from losing money to making money. Now, the bad news was their revenues dropped by about 50%. Don't worry about it, because we're going to talk with you. Our revenues have actually gone up. Another big efficiency is on the people side, and Faith, again, is going to get into more of this in detail. But we've found that when we're selling on a subscription basis, maybe even an open insertion order, that our relationship with our customer changes, so that rather than us having to sell month after month, posting after posting, it shifts to more of a customer service model. Are you happy? If there's a problem, let's fix it. How are your stats? Are you seeing the right candidates, both in terms of quantity and quality? Customer service people, much easier to manage. And they're a lot cheaper than salespeople. So Faith is going to talk about the implementation now.
Great. Thanks, Steven.
You bet.
So Steven told you about why we decided to do this and what the advantages were. And I'm going to talk now about how we went about making it happen. So when it comes to implementation, we talk about the 4 Ps: pricing, product, people, and process. I'm starting with pricing because that's actually how Steven and I talked about what we were going to do. It started to be almost like first just a different pricing model where we could sell on a pay-per-performance basis or we could sell on a duration basis. One of the things that happened with that is that many people think, oh, instead of $75 a posting for 30 days, now it's going to be $1 a click. And somebody might want to buy 10 clicks, that's $10. How are we going to make any money on this? Well, so we looked at our pricing model for duration base, and we knew that a lot of our customers would continue to buy that way for a while. And so we looked at what Steven had talked about, that all-you-can-eat 3-month package, which for our customers are large employers, and so that gives them a scrape and We filter so it's the appropriate jobs for our candidates. And that package is $5,000. So we basically leveled off our pricing model and said that a minimum purchase on a pay-for-performance basis is $5,000. And that might be for 5,000 clicks, so $1 a click. Then the other thing that happened when we started talking about price is you'll hear people talk about a bid. But a bid isn't a bid isn't a bid. It gets very confusing very quickly. Whose bid is it? So we went and decided that we were going to have some very strong nomenclature in our business, all the way down into the code the developers talked about. And it was that if an advertiser is paying us money, that is a customer for us, and that's a customer spend. So we get $1. And then on the distribution side, our publisher side, what we're going to do is call that a distribution cost. And this way, we could keep it very, we could all understand each other very well and not get confused by all the bids that people were talking about. And lastly, on the pricing side, Steven mentioned that I was going to talk about a hotel chain that we have as a customer. And until last year, they were a customer where they bought an annual all-you-can-eat package from us. So for 12 months, the most, we sold that at $12,500. So the most we could make from that customer on our job posting product was $12,500. We've shifted them over to a pay-for-performance model. And now, at this current time, that's roughly about $5,000 a month. So on an annual basis, that's $60,000. So we've now increased that customer fourfold, and we can continue to sell more. And lastly, what we had happen last year for the first time was we had a job posting customer that actually spent over $100,000 with us. So when it came to implementing the product, we started out with this traditional duration-based posting. And quickly, the first thing we did, because it takes time to evolve the product, was we added a flat CPC. And so this was the $1 a click. So every job would have the same cost per click on it coming from the advertiser. And that's how we sold it. Pretty quickly, some of our more sophisticated advertisers started to ask us if we could handle a job-level bidding feed. And what a job-level bidding feed is it's that each job comes to us with a different customer spend on it. What gets really complicated is that we take in these jobs once an hour. So at 9 a.m., a customer spend might be $1 for that job, and at 10 a.m., that job may now be 75 cents. So it's really important for us to be able to manage that distribution cost in order to ensure we have a profit margin. And then lastly, where we're getting to now, and Steven talked about this, is really it's become a subscription model. And this is awesome because then it's left up to the customer to say, I don't want to do this anymore, versus us hounding them for renewals all the time. When it comes to people, the most important key areas where you need to have people that understand and can think about the product and how we're going to do it are the sales team, the customer service and implementation team, and your IT developers. And basically what we found is you need to have creative thinkers on that team. They have to be problem solvers and think very critically because there's a lot of issues, and it's really, really helpful if they are good at math. So when it came to the process, one of the things Steven mentioned was how he liked to take on customers that would then need to be figured out how to service them. And so when we were only selling duration-based postings, there was a customer that we decided to try a cost per hire deal with. And what we quickly learned, and you guys saw this morning, there was a great chart on the whole recruitment process, is that for us, this was a terrible deal for us. We didn't do it again. But sometimes from your mistakes, you learn the most, right? And so we learned that we need to develop a process and a product that's going to be mostly what's in our control. If we're going to get paid for our performance, then it should be on what we have control over. And for us, with these large organizations, that's really the apply click, because we send the candidates over to the employer's site to apply. And so at the most, we were willing to do pay-per-lead deals and cost-per-click deals. The other part of the process was we needed to incorporate a cap. Some of our customers were asking for a budgetary cap or a click cap. And we also had to be able to handle duration basis. Sometimes they would say, I want to do this for 3 months, and then I need to stop because I'm not hiring after that for, let's say, an internship. And now we're still in the process of continuing to improve our product, and one of the things we are trying to sort out and develop is the ability to handle not only a budgetary cap or a click cap, but a duration at the same time, which gets quite complicated, especially because they can choose to either stop when the first one happens, so maybe the duration when we didn't get enough clicks, or vice versa. And so that gets a little more complicated. And lastly, we realized that we really need a new role in the organization that can manage all of this on a daily basis, and that's what we call a traffic manager. And that traffic manager right now is a half-time job in our organization. We quickly see that turning into a full-time job and perhaps having a couple of these roles. So what has been the impact on our company? So our job posting revenue from 2017 to 2018, it doubled. And the entire growth, that whole doubling, came from our product jobs at scale. And not only that, as Steven talked about, our revenues increased, and so did our net income, because we kept that profit margin by really concentrating on always looking at that customer spend and distribution cost. We actually kept our margins unchanged, and therefore our net income really increased. So thanks for listening. I don't know if there's time for questions or not with two people.
We got time for one question. So
Okay.
Let's look for the hardest one on the screen.
You get to take it then.
Hardest question. Why not pay per application rather than pay per click? Should there be a trackable click to apply ratio? Good question.
Yeah. So in the U.S., there's a federal government agency, OFCCP, which is basically, it's a federal government agency that tries to prevent employment discrimination. Most of the large employers in the country, any employer with more than 50 employees, basically, is governed by that. They are sort of deemed to be federal contractors, even if they don't actually have a contract directly with the government. And then there's a lot of regulation where it's up to the employer to prove that they are not discriminating against people of color, women, people with disabilities, military veterans, et cetera. And the easiest way for them to do that is to have every candidate go through the same process. So if a candidate applies on our site and we email or somehow send that application to the employer, that candidate has gone through a different process than if they apply on another website. Now, it's not insurmountable, and lots of employers deal with it, but from a easy-to-manage basis from the employer side, the easiest thing is if we send that candidate to the ATS. Almost all of the employers that we work with provide us with a tracking code, so that employer can automatically identify the source of candidates coming from us. We do have employers who buy applications from us. Military, for example, those candidates that if they're interested in going into the Army or Navy, for example, then those candidates typically apply on our site, and then we send that data to the employer, sometimes by email, but sometimes API, et cetera. Then we are going to be looking at a cost per application for that employer. It creates a problem with our publisher network, because most of the publisher networks, and JobGate is an exception, they don't want to touch cost per application. They just want to send the clicks to us. And then we get back into that arbitrage problem. We're paying per clicks, we're getting paid for applications. And then you can end up upside down.
I will throw one more quick question at you.
I don't think so.
Question.
I'm pretty sure I heard that was the last one.
How many people do you have in sales now versus before?
Sales and customer support is 4. I guess the total number is unchanged. But the roles
Yeah.
are different.
Yeah, the roles are changing.
And the customer support people are much cheaper than the salespeople.
And much easier to
Yes.
manage.
And
Much
easy.
much easier to manage. Who here has trouble managing salespeople? Don't raise your hands. Don't raise your
It's
hands.
easier to say who doesn't have
Stephen
trouble.
and Faith, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Day
Peter.
2 will be around.
Thanks.